a Playlyst original.
Welcome to the Pilot Podcast,
where we review the pilot episodes of TV shows to answer your question, should I watch this?
My name is Mitu.
And my name is BJ.
And this week, we're watching the 4 seasons on Netflix.
So stay tuned to find out where Mitu likes to go on couple getaways.
Wow, what a question, what a thought you've unlocked in my mind about couples trips as someone who was raised by the Real Housewives of Insert City.
Well, sounds like you'll have an exciting answer for that. But in the meantime, can you tell us about 3 couples that like to go on trips together?
Yes. The 4 seasons on Netflix is based on a 1980s rom-com movie. This dramedy miniseries follows 3 couples who are longtime friends, and they take 4 weekend trips a year, 1 per season, and their tradition becomes complicated when one couple decides to part ways.
I just want to say, I forgot that they do 4 trips a year, but I now remember when they said it at the start, that's a lot.
The 4 seasons.
That's a lot of trips with friends in a year.
I couldn't do that many trips with myself.
These are definitely older, established couples who have time for leisure.
Time and money, despite one of them being a teacher.
Good savings?
I guess.
So.
But let's talk about these 3 couples.
Do you have a favorite?
Yes, I think we share our favorite, Kate and Jack, played by Tina Fey and Will Forte.
Yes.
They, to me, feel like the most realistic couple of a, I'm going to say healthy, I say that loosely, compared to the other 2.
Secure relationship.
Yes, where it's like you're a long time into it. Maybe it's not as like exciting, perhaps, as when you were much younger and silly, but they seem to respect each other.
Yes. Of the 3 couples, Kate and Jack seem to have built a stable, secure relationship. They have an understanding through what seems like pretty open communication. They even admit to having some rough patches that they've worked through. And it's a big contrast to their friends.
I think it will be funny, though, when this relationship gets rocky, because I'm sure it will. I don't think we would meet all 3 couples and have only one of the 3 couples go through some kind of difficulty. I think it'll maybe even feel more jarring to have Kate and Jack have some kind of issue when we have Claude, played by Marco Calvani, and his husband, Danny, played by Coleman Domingo, where Danny is hiding some big health secrets from Claude, or at least his approach to these big health secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a very chaotic couple in Anne, played by Carrie Kenny Silver, icon of Reno 911, and Nick, played by Steve Carell.
Anne and Nick are interesting because, as you said, they're chaotic, but it's very one-sided chaos. And it's a great example of what happens when you don't communicate what you're feeling.
Yes.
We see Nick has built up all this resentment for Anne. And then we see Anne, who's like actually very happy and like, things have been great. We're just chill.
She's vibing. Even if things seem off to her, they're certainly not as off as Nick believes them to be.
Exactly. And this trip is to celebrate their 25-year anniversary. And they clearly have different views on where they're at.
Yeah, Nick is like, we did 25 years. High five, girl. Good job. We did it. Quarter century. And Anne has a very different perception of that. She believes they're celebrating 25 to hopefully do another.
Yeah, 25 more. Let's keep going.
Let's keep this party trucking. And Nick said, baby, you play a little bit too much Farmville on that iPad.
Which I might be disturbed if someone pulled out an iPad at night. The lights in bed.
It's a lot.
Yeah. But you got to tell your partner that.
Yes. You have to speak up. You can't just silently stare at them and in resentment. And I think that's what's fun about this show is like, no one is necessarily right or wrong. It is intentionally gray because it is the intricacies of couples, and we're meeting these people decades into their relationships with each other romantically, and also the relationships between them as friends Because we also know that Kate doesn't really get along with Claude, and she always likes to have a buffer. There seems to be something also perhaps between Kate and Anne. Like, they just don't seem very similar, and it feels like Kate is much closer with Danny and even to a lesser extent Nick than Anne. So there's like really great friction and stuff. So there's context we're certainly missing, but yeah, lots of quiet resentment from Nick.
And I think that makes sense, all those dynamics in friend groups, especially if you have couples that are friends. Not everyone in the couple will have the same degree of connection with each other. But I'm curious to hear your opinions about Claude, because he is very worried about Danny, who seems to just be downplaying, denying, or just chill about possible life-threatening events.
Danny seems to be scared. I bet the reveal in this show will be that Danny is avoiding his health issues, hiding them from Claude, hiding them from Kate, avoiding addressing them because he himself is scared. And so if I don't take this seriously and if I'm flippant about this, then maybe the issue itself becomes smaller.
Mm-hmm.
That's my perception of where I think the growth will be.
I believe you.
For Danny and Claude.
I think that is a reasonable take. I didn't consider that he might have as much fear, if not more, than Claude, and is just showing it in a different way by like withdrawing or avoiding or distracting himself.
Going on nonsense business trips where he's not needed just to avoid doctor's appointments.
Which also, I'm sure he's not realizing looks suspicious to be like, I am going to go away to Miami.
Yeah. Ugh, it's so strange. And then again, we have Nick and Anne. There were 2 lines from them that cracked me up. Nick saying, we're like coworkers at a nuclear facility. We sit in the same room all night monitoring different screens. And then Anne doesn't like that Nick is trying to have her do hobbies. And she said, he acts like I abandoned a career in ceramics, but doesn't the world have enough bowls? And to that I say no, but I respect your decision to not want a hobby. There's actually one more that cracked me up when Nick said about Anne, I can't spend the rest of my life with a woman who has to take a few practice steps to get on an escalator.
Oh, I missed that one.
Tearing her up. Like, he's just been silently watching that lady do Farmville on her iPad, coming up with bangers.
And then my favorite quote, I'm not going to give context. You have to watch the pilot to understand. But Nick just says, try.
Ooh. I'm not sure if that scene was supposed to be as funny as it was, but BJ cracked up, I cracked up. And it's doing that thing a lot of comedies are doing right now where the underlying tension is there, the underlying cringe and sadness is there, but it's a funny.
It's a little dark, but I laughed anyway.
Certainly, a guffaw happened.
I know if we were in that scene with the cast, we would have to hold back our laughter.
100%. I might have to get back into the water.
You would just leave. Is Mitu okay? Mm-hmm. Yep.
How do you see things going for this group of couples with Nick and Anne having this friction now?
Well, I'm assuming the season will get through the next 3 trips.
Ooh, that's true. We have more seasons ahead.
So I think Nick and Anne, it's not going to work well. Nick seems very ready for something new.
Yeah.
You now have me worried about Kate and Jack. I guess just for interest over the course of the series, they need some conflict.
Those are 2 people that are definitely going to find their way back to each other, but there's definitely going to be conflict. There's no way that these 3 couples have been so defined by being 3 couple friends, how that wouldn't rock the other relationships to see one kind of falter.
I want them to have a happy ending. And Claude and Danny, I think they will also have a happy ending, but it's going to be one of these rocky paths where they finally learn to trust each other.
Yeah. Claude is going to be like, Danny, if you were so scared, why didn't you just tell me?
Exactly.
That's why I'm here.
And then all the couples will say, wow, the key to a solid relationship is communication.
What I will say is I feel like I haven't had Will Forte in my screen in a long time. And I was very happy to see him in this show. It reminded me of just how charming he is. And I did not know Coleman Domingo and Tina Fey had chemistry like this. I mean, I guess I don't know why I wouldn't know. Like, I don't know if they've done anything else together. But them together in this show made me want to see them in more things.
They were very believable as like close longtime friends.
Yes. Really, really wonderful chemistry between those two. Because I love that this show also places such an emphasis on these friendships. Obviously, like the friendships between the couples have been enduring for a really long time. And so I wonder how that's going to develop as Danny continues to ignore his health stuff.
You do love friendships, but do you love stories about couple friendships enough to keep watching the 4 seasons on Netflix?
Absolutely. You put this cast together, you already have me sat on my couch. And then this pilot episode under 30 minutes, because what a beautiful thing for Netflix to get back to its roots, to get back to television roots. You can tell a story in 25 minutes, y'all.
And they did
Just
it.
trust yourselves. They did. A full story. Introduced us to all 3 couples, got some ha-has in, understood some stakes. So really well paced, a little slow in this first episode, I think intentionally. But yeah, all that said, I will watch again seriously for Dramedy Hive, for people who love stories about friendship hive. This one is for us.
I will say I was shocked how much I enjoyed this pilot episode. I would watch again seriously. I like seeing the friendship aspect and all of the couples in kind of different stages of their relationship dynamics. And, you know, I'm really curious to get your opinion on the film because I hope you watch that for both of us.
I can't wait.
And so it's going to be great. More than 4 seasons for us.
Shout out.
Okay, Mitu. What is your favorite couples getaway destination?
None of the above.
Well, you didn't pick one.
One of my nightmares is the idea of being on a double date or on a couples trip where, like, you know, on Real Housewives, or I guess you specifically wouldn't know, but often they'll have these moments where the couples get together and they're like, marriage is hard. Every day we got to wake up and choose each other. And it's like the idea of being part of a conversation like that makes me so tired. I once visited a friend with my partner, and then I realized while I was there that it was a couples hang, and my partner had to bribe me with like food and like he really had to figure out how to keep me in the room and keep me present because, as you know, BJ, I wanted to disengage pretty intensely.
You're good at disengaging.
Because then I'm too good at disengaging because they started doing the like breaking out cards, talking about, have you ever heard of those cards where it's like, couples describe this and decide how would y'all handle this difficult situation. Just ridiculous nonsense.
So it was a couples themed event.
Oh. I mean, I just cannot do that. I cannot do that.
That's fair. You don't want to get stuck with a Nick and Ann.
No. Or like any of the Real Housewives couples trips. Like that just seems so exhausting. One time my partner and I went to a wedding, and I noticed that a few of the couples, this was a destination wedding, and we were in a pool at a resort, and a few of the couples started to congregate around us and started chatting, and they started to do this thing where like a lot of the men in the couples were like, oh, how do you feel about this investment account or something? And I don't quite remember it like this. I remember just sort of casually leaving. But my partner said I dove my head under the water and swam to the other side of the pool.
I believe that. I know you well
and
enough
just left.
that you would instinctively sink into the water and disappear.
Just like fully in full view of a group of adults. I just got out of there.
Now, what I'm not sure of, I can imagine you doing it slowly, but also just very quickly and not caring.
Yes. And it's the latter. I learned later from a partner who was like, I'm not sure if you know this, but you sort of did a half dive from the water into deeper water to get away from us.
You really just pieced out.
And I left him.
Yeah.
But I don't think he minded the conversation. I did.
Right. Okay, so Mitu's not a couples trip type of person.
Don't invite me on your couples trips. Sorry.
You're not sorry?
No.
Well, if you want to listen to our reviews where we talk about other topics, head to our website at thepilotpodcast.com, and you can follow us on all of your favorite podcast platforms.
You can also follow us on social media for all the best couples advice at The Pilot Pod, and you can send thoughts, feelings, show recommendations, because every other week we do a show recommended by you, our wonderful listeners, to askthepilotpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Bye.